the first movement of Claude Debussy's Violin Sonata from James Ehnes and his collaborative duo partner Andrew Armstrong. They were here not too long ago, just in May, doing some recital work here in Winnipeg, again at Westminster United. But now, Mr. Ehnes will be appearing with the MCO, playing and conducting Dvorak and Elgar, and playing Beethoven's Violin Concerto. What a work. Here in Winnipeg tomorrow night at Westminster United. Mr. Ehnes, welcome to the Diamond Lane.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. So wait, so you're born in Brandon, though?
That's right.
This is your home.
Yeah.
This is your home.
And it always feels like that when I come back here.
Well, maybe that's why it's sold out.
Times. Well, that's nice. It's a great program. It's going to be a very fun concert.
It sounds amazing. So let's just go back really quick for some of our listenership who might not necessarily be aware of the incredible work you've done and where you've come from. You were born in Brandon. Your dad was a trumpet prof at BU.
Yeah, that's right. He was the trumpet prof at BU for, probably close to 40 years.
Amazing.
And my mother had a ballet school. She was brought out, they're both Americans, and they came out to Brandon for these jobs. She was brought out to start up this, what was at the time a satellite school for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. And they came to Brandon and thought, it's a nice place. We'll stay for a couple of years. And of course that became home, and their children we were all born there and grew up there. It's a great place.
Amazing. Well, having your parents both very artistic and educationally minded, artistically and educationally minded, was the violin your choice?
Yeah, it actually
was.
I think it was natural for me to get involved in what I saw around me. I think that's what tends to happen with kids. If they see something, they say, I want to do that too. And for me, it was musicians. I mean, not just my dad, but most of our family's closest friends were his colleagues from the music school at Brandon University. So I sort of figured everybody played an instrument. And as far as the violin goes, though, that's still a bit of a family mystery why I decided that I wanted to play the violin of all things, because there's no history of that in either side of my family. But that was what I wanted. I would have heard it from, my parents always had music on in the house, but I must have seen it somewhere, because I did know what instrument that was that made that sound. And it was, 35 years ago that I got a violin.
That's amazing.
So I should know how to do it by now.
Yeah, knock on wood. Yes, yeah. And you started studying, there was a period. Was it 9 when you started studying with your dad's former colleague, Francis Chaplin?
Yes, yeah.
At BU.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who was such a legend in that community as well. And then you went on, actually, Francis Chaplin also taught our concertmaster, Gwen Hobeck, as well.
Yeah,
she studied with him.
Well, Francis Chaplin really, you can't find a Canadian orchestra that doesn't have people that worked with Francis Chaplin. He was such a huge figure in Canadian music and just such a great guy. And you think about why sometimes you have this serendipity in your life. I mean, he was my dad's best friend. I mean, how strange is that a boy that would want to play the violin would have that opportunity right in front of him?
Well, I'm very fortunate. And then beyond that, you went off to the Meadowmount. Was that a summer music academy?
That's
you started studying with Sally Thomas at that point? Right. And is that why you ended up at Juilliard? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Francis Chaplin had been at Juilliard in the 50s, I guess it would have been. And one of his classmates there was Sally Thomas. So when it got to a point where he and my parents and various other sort of influences in my life thought that it would be a good idea for me to go to one of these intensive summer programs, Meadowmount was a natural choice, because Dr. Chaplin had gone there, because he knew Sally Thomas and knew that would be a teacher that he felt in sync with. They had studied with the same teacher, so they kind of came from the same traditions. So it was very seamless, working with the two of them, with Francis Chaplin during the year and Sally Thomas during the summer, and then going on to New York when I was 17. I graduated from high school and headed out there. And that's a little bit of a change going from Brandon to New York, but it was great.
Definitely. And speaking of those changes, you live now in Florida, and is that because because you've been scarred by Manitoba winters? Is that what it is?
I love Manitoba. But I'm just not a winter person.
No, man. Yeah. If you can, whatever.
Well, notice my last 2 times here playing in Winnipeg, I've managed to put them in May and September. Or, yeah, we're in September.
Yeah, September, right? Yes.
So, yeah, losing track right now. But, the winters were never really quite my thing. So Florida's working out pretty well.
Well, I'm so glad. Beyond Florida and Manitoba, you're also going to Amsterdam, Liverpool. You're touring China and Spain. You're still in residency with Melbourne and the OSM. And you're the artistic director of the Seattle Chamber Music Society. You debuted with the OSM at 13. And you've won 11 Junos, a Grammy, a gramophone, not to mention the CMC competition. Is this plural? The couple CMC competitions?
I don't remember.
Oh my gosh, never mind. You were also appointed to the Order of Canada, which is ridiculous. I mean, and amazing.
That's
deserved.
Really, really exciting. That was one of the most amazing honors I could ever have imagined. It's incredible.
Wow. What I want to know, though, is when was your MCO debut?
My MCO debut would have been in 92, I think.
Okay.
I'm thinking it was spring of 92, around May or something.
15, 16 years old, 16 years old?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was shortly after my 16th birthday. It might have been 93, but I'm thinking it was 92. I remember the occasion.
Do you remember what you played?
Yeah, I do, actually, because it's funny that one of the pieces I played was a violin concerto by Panufnik, a Polish composer who died recently. But the other piece on the program that I played was this Schubert A major rondo for violin and strings that I played in this past June, for the first time since. So that was a strange thing.
Amazing.
Like more years had passed in between my 2 performances of that piece than I had been alive by the time I first played it. It was one of those strange perspective things.
Amazing. Well, but speaking of your accomplishments in your youth, your first recording came out when you were 19, and that was the Paganini Caprices, right? Mm-hmm. And then recently, I mean, in your 40th year, this year, you've returned to Bach. You've been doing some sonatas and partitas again.
Well, I've never really gotten away from it, but I've returned to it with with renewed enthusiasm, I guess. I mean,
where does that come from? Yeah.
I grew up, like every violinist, I guess, studying Bach, and I got kind of obsessed with it and played all these pieces and recorded them when I was maybe 23 or 24 or something like that. And then I got into, I don't know, just the way that scheduling happened, and maybe I got a little lazy. Of the 6 pieces, or the 6 sonatas and partitas, I started playing 2 or 3 of them a lot, and the other 3 not really much at all. And I started missing them and thinking, well, this is great music, and I really need to make a point to get these ones back into my active repertoire. And then I had some friends that run series here and there, and they said, why don't you play all the solo Bach? And I thought, this year that I've turned 40, I've been doing all these big projects that have had sort of special significance in my life. Like my quartet, we played all of the Beethoven quartets in this cycle over in Asia. And I've been doing this big recital tour of Canada, or 26 recitals, I think, all across the country in every province and territory. Right? Yeah. And that's been really fun. And then really revisiting all of the solo Bach and playing them in these kind of marathon concerts. I think for my 50th birthday, I'm maybe just going to go on vacation and drink a lot of beer or something, because this has been a pretty crazy year. It's been a lot of work.
Well, I mean, it's been a gift for us as listeners, I'm sure.
Well, it's been a joy for me. I think the whole idea, I guess, from a personal standpoint, was celebrating the fact that, I've been fortunate enough to gain some sort of control over my life. You start in this career, and if someone is offering to pay you to play a concert, you say, yes, of course, when, where, what do you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want. And I feel very lucky to be at a point now where I can decide what I want to do and where I want to do it and when I want to do it and how, and that's a great luxury, and I feel really just very grateful for that.
Well, I think That is a wonderful thing to be grateful for. I am both envious and in deep admiration right now. Just like it's one of those moments. But we are going to go to a short break. But before we do, we're just going to have a little bit of Bach from you, and then more chats with James Ehnes here in the Diamond Lane on Classic 107 in Winnipeg. And we are back in the Diamond Lane with James Ehnes, soloist, and, well, he'll be conducting as well tomorrow night at Westminster United Church with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra, performing Dvorak, Elgar, and Beethoven. I cannot wait. Thank you for staying with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Nice to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm gonna ask you a few more questions about what's been going on lately. Recently, I've noticed that you've been recording quite a bit of Bartók.
Yeah, that was
he's for me.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
that was an unexpected joy. The Bartók. It's music that I always loved and, kind of obsessed over, and have had the opportunities to perform it, of course. But as far as recording it, it's generally the sort of repertoire that a lot of music labels, CD labels, would sort of stay away from. And I was actually just approached by Chandos about recording the violin concertos, the 2 violin concertos and the viola concerto.
Yeah.
I'd done some work with the label before, and they wanted to do sort of a set of orchestral works. They recorded the piano concertos and some of the orchestral pieces, and of course I jumped at that opportunity and did that recording and used that as sort of a hook, saying, well, now that you've recorded the violin concertos and the viola concerto, you probably will want to record the violin sonatas too, right? Oh. And they said, oh, yeah, maybe we can look at that. And I said, well, because if you want to do that, then you're going to want to record the solo sonata too. And then if you do that, you have to record the rhapsodies, and you probably shouldn't stop there. You might want to record the various Hungarian folk songs and sets like that, and the contrasts trio and the 44 duos for 2 violins. And it ended up becoming this 4-disc project of all of Bartók's violin works. That was just such a neat thing to be able to do, because it is such incredible music and music that I've been so passionate about. And I feel really, really lucky that all just kind of worked out so easily.
It would take a technician of your caliber to be able to convince them that was a good idea, I'm sure. But that being said, you mentioned the viola concerto, yeah? Mm-hmm. So tell us about that. You're not just a violinist.
Well, I play the viola as much as I can, or I guess as much as I'm asked to. I love it. And one thing that has been really nice is I've become, I don't know, maybe somewhat of the house violist for Chandos Records, which is very nice. I've had the chance to record the Bartók and Harold in Italy, Berlioz, and we're recording the Walton Concerto in the spring. So it's the viola repertoire, of course, is smaller than the violins, but it's wonderful. There's incredible music, and I think that. Physically speaking, I think that some violists can play the violin and some violinists can play the viola, and for others the change is less natural. And I feel lucky that I think starting to play the viola early enough in my life, which I did, has made it's never felt like any sort of it doesn't really feel like I'm playing a different instrument, really. I mean, there's of course a slightly different method of tone production, and it's bigger, but it feels pretty natural, and I enjoy it very much.
So glad. Now, after talking about Bach and Bartók and how passionately you feel about both of their musics, is there a composer whose language feels more organic to you than others, one that resonates more in you and your aesthetic?
Well, the best part about my job is the variety, and that I don't have to commit to a favorite.
Yeah, that's fair.
It really is my favorite thing about doing what I do, and I think that it makes me better at everything. The fact that I don't have to do the same thing over and over and over. There are very few pieces that I think I could play over and over and over and over with the same sort of commitment to it and the same freshness and excitement. I mean, one piece that I feel like I could play pretty much every day is the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. That one, for whatever reason, is it my favorite violin concerto? I mean, it's one of many favorites that I have, but that one somehow violinistically is always interesting and musically is somehow always fresh. But, you know, even a piece like the Beethoven Concerto that I'm playing tomorrow, I mean, there's no greater piece of music than the Beethoven Violin Concerto. I mean, we're so lucky as violinists that that piece was written for us. But I don't think that's a piece that I could just play week after week after week, because somehow you need to, the axes of the preparation and the desire, you know, have to just intersect just so. And then I think it's time to do something else, you know, play Shostakovich or Bartók or Mozart or who knows what, and then come back to it.
Yeah. Well, and you have no lack of variety in your repertoire. You are no stranger to the newer music either. Dalla Piccola, John Adams, Paul Schoenfeld, and also you just premiered James Newton Howard's Violin Concerto. And we were just talking about this a moment ago. Didn't he wrote some of the Batman film scores?
Yeah, well, James Newton Howard has written some of the most iconic film scores of recent years, like all the Hunger Games, and he co-wrote Dark Knight with Hans Zimmer, and he's just an amazing natural musician. You know, beautiful things just kind of flow out of him, and he's just the nicest guy too. This Violin Concerto is wonderful. I went to he did the scores for all those M. Night Shyamalan movies, like The Sixth Sense, and there was this movie called what was it called? Signs, with Mel Gibson.
Right.
And I went to see that in the theaters, and the opening credits, the music is so exciting. I was sitting there with my wife, and she leaned over to me and said, "This music's awesome. This guy should write you a violin concerto." And just sort of as a joke, right? And we kind of laughed about it. And then it would have been maybe 7-8 years later or something that I was approached from this orchestra in California, and they said, "Well, we have this unusual anniversary coming up for our conductor, and we've decided to commission a composer to write a violin concerto. Will you play it?" And I said, "Well, who's writing it?" And they said, "James Newton Howard." I couldn't believe it. I thought, what are the chances of that? So, of course, I jumped at the opportunity, and he's become a very dear friend and just wonderful guy.
That is so great. That's so great. Old music, new music. Although you're such a seasoned performer, is there something that still makes your palms sweat and your mouth dry out? Like, is there, you know, are those
Thanks for making me think about it.
I'm just like, well, you know, as a performer, I want to know.
Yeah, I find that it all ties into just sort of an overall level of comfort in my life in general. You know, I think that's something that I try to tell people that are getting into the music business. You know, when I am in the middle of my season, I'm playing all the time, and it's my normal. That's just what I do. Is at night I go out and play a concert in front of people. So I think doing enough of it makes one feel more comfortable with it. And, you know, if I'm well rested and well fed and don't have a lot of outside problems in my life, then generally I'm fine. You know, it's sometimes, you know, if there's 37 unanswered emails all about stressful subjects in my inbox, or, you know, if my kids aren't feeling well, or if, you know, my suitcase was lost, or, you know, things like that. Those are the things that sometimes can affect me in terms of feling a little bit of stage nerves, because I just feel like I'm not kind of right.
You're otherwise
somehow.
distracted.
Yeah. But you know, I do love I love performing, and a great luxury now is that most places that I play are places where I've been before, and where I know people, I know the orchestras, I know the audiences. I feel like I mean, people go to concerts to enjoy them, right? Like that's something I think as performers that we have to always remember. Is no one's going to that concert to try to find something they don't like in your performance, or to listen for mistakes. I mean, people go because they want to have a great experience. And as a performer, I mean, you want to give them that good experience. And I think if that's as performers, if that's what we focus on, that helps put things in a better perspective.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that Winnipeg audiences are going to be able to enjoy the Dvorak and the Elgar and the Beethoven. Tell us a few things. So we're doing the Dvorak and Elgar string serenades and then Beethoven's concerto. For the Beethoven, this is the question for the Beethoven. Have you ever recorded it?
I'm recording it next month, actually.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
With who?
I'm recording it with a wonderful violinist turned conductor, a great friend of mine named Andrew Manzi, and the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic. I'm their artist in residence this year, so it's this wonderful opportunity to spend several weeks with them playing the Beethoven, and we're going to be recording the romances as well. And I'm really looking forward to that project a lot. I have very special feelings to that orchestra and that orchestra with Andrew Manzi. We've worked together several times. So it's nice with a piece like the Beethoven. I mean, people... It's gotten to a point where people have said, well, you haven't recorded the Beethoven concerto.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Are you waiting for something in particular? I said, well, not really. I mean, I guess just waiting for the opportunity that feels like the right thing when it can be done the way I want to and with the people I want to. And so I'm really thrilled that this, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but everything's lined up to do it next month. So I'm excited for that.
Well, we're excited for you and excited to get to witness the airing out, as if you will, at least one of many.
It's nice to play the Beethoven in Winnipeg again, because I've played the Beethoven in Winnipeg, but I think it's been about 20 years. I played it with Bramwell Tovey in the WSO quite a long time ago. So yeah, it's time.
Yeah, excellent. And about playing and conducting, because the Dvorak and the Elgar, you were going to be playing and conducting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically just sort of leading it from the concertmaster chair.
Right,
The MCO's regular concermaster, Carl Stobie, is a great friend of mine. And yeah, so I'm sort of shoving him over, and he and I are sharing the front stand. And, you know, it's such a great a group of musicians. They're very proactive musicians. These are people that all want to take sort of an active role in making this music come to life. So the rehearsal process has been fun, and there had been some discussion as to whether I would, conduct it or whether I would play it and sort of lead it from the first violin chairs. I've done some projects with the MCO in the past where I've actually, just conducted like with the baton and all that. And I think Carl and I just thought, it might be really fun if I'm just playing. And it's a different dynamic. There are certain things that are very challenging without having an actual conductor there, but there are certain rewards, the way that it brings everyone into a more proactive role. You can't really be passive, relying on someone to give you a particular entrance or something. You have to kind of really be into the feel. So it'll be a different type of performance of the piece than people might be used to, but I think it's going to go really well.
James Ehnes, tomorrow night at Westminster United Church, starting at 7:30. Tickets are sold out. I have a pair that I'm going to give away in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I want to, just because you were talking about the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, so I thought, why not play a little bit of that?
All right.
So we're going to do that before you can... We're already getting a caller, so I'm just going to thank you, but we're not giving away the tickets just yet. First, a little Mendelssohn from James Ehnes with the Philharmonia Orchestra conducted by Vladimir Ashkenazy. You've worked with everybody.
I get to meet cool people. That's a good part of my job.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool part of your job. It has been a pleasure to have you, sir. Very excited for Winnipeg audiences to get to witness tomorrow night with Dvorak, Elgar, and Beethoven. Enjoy this third movement of this 64th opus of Felix Mendelssohn, and perhaps we'll see you tomorrow night.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care.